I asked Luke if I could introduce him, and he said, I need no introduction. So without further ado, Luke Schramm.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. This is the second week of Advent, and our topic this Advent is sacred places. A sacred place can be anywhere. Like my mother, after she delivers all three of us sleepy, grumpy boys to school in the morning, her van is probably a sacred place. Or maybe for my father, it might be the recliner when he gets off another 12-hour shift and finally gets to rest. Until one of us comes in the room and disturbs him, that is. For me, I feel a deep connection to this church. This church was started over 100 years ago in my great-great-aunt Frederica Pfeiffer's kitchen. It started only as a bi-weekly meeting of 13 couples. Back then, the church exclusively spoke German. In fact, the original name of the church was Hoffnungsfield, which translates to Field of Hope in German. Sorry. Back then, it would have been much more common for the preacher to start the service with a greeting like, Guten Tag, ich hoffe, ihr habt einen guten Morgen. A lot has changed over the years. The name of the church has changed many times, but the message of hope has still remained true. In fact, we became the first opening and affirming church in the late 80s, and we still remain to be only one of two in Elk Grove. We also have started every morning saying our opening motto, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Of course, that has changed too, as we now have added a couple more verses. That sentence sincerely embodies how I feel this church really is, an open, welcome family. So this place that we are in now is sacred to me for two reasons. One, this place really is my own personal family history, and two, all of you, my church family. I've known many of you since I was a young child. I have grown up here in this holy, sacred place. What are some sacred places in your life?
The beach and sunshine.
Anybody?
Our home.
Home?
Music.
Music?
My backyard.
Oh,
Gym.
my patio.
Sacred places can be anywhere, not just in churches. Like how the mustard seed in the parable just pops up everywhere. If you ever have had a mustard plant growing in your garden, you know how invasive it is and how hard it is to get rid of once you've had it. The kingdom of God is kind of like that. And though I do regard this church very highly, it is not the most sacred place I have encountered in my life. That title is reserved for the holy grounds of Camp Cazadera, a place that I never would have known of if it wasn't for this church. Camp Kaz, as everyone calls it, is almost universally regarded as hallowed ground by campers and counselors alike. I have never in my life been to a more peaceful and loving environment. Even the air seems to radiate with positivity and love. Somehow teams from all over Northern California come together to form a community like no other. While there is still some conflict, there is never anything major enough to truly compare to the troubles we face in our ordinary lives, which are led outside of camp. The only sadness or fear most campers feel is the approach of Friday, when we have to go home. I am still only a newcomer to camp, being that this was my first year, and yet I still feel closer to some of the kids that I met at camp than most of the friends I had made outside of camp in my life. You really do become a family in that week, one that supports each other and makes each other feel loved. In fact, it was this family that forced me into realizing that I myself am not ugly, and made me feel truly comfortable enough to actually smile. Not just doing that false smile that I've been taught to do for the camera since I was a child. Like that. It is this kind of love and compassion that I have learned brings them back to camp year after year. Even though it is in all fairness a church camp, Many of the campers had become atheists and agnostics for their own reasons, yet they decided to make that journey up into the coastal mountain ranges of Sonoma each year. The topic of our lessons at camp was appropriately the kingdom of heaven and how we can interpret the Bible's definition into our lives. As we read in Matthew, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. That's all right. It can be the smallest of seeds, and it grows into the largest, most plentiful of fields. Before telling this parable, he told another, the parable of the sower. The farmer went out to sow his seed, and he scattered some seed along the path, and then the birds ate it up. Some fell in the rocky places where the soil was shallow. They sprang up quickly, and the sun scorched them. Others fell among thorns, which grew up and then choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. The kingdom of heaven is like a mixture of the two. It appears in the weeds and their thorns, in the haters and the doubters, and in the slums and the ghettos, and yes, it appears in the good soil too. We can find sacred places anywhere. We don't have to be the seed that falls upon good soil to find a place where we feel comfortable and loved. There are sacred places everywhere. Another place that I had the privilege of visiting this summer was Homeboy Industries. Before beginning our great trek to LA, we were required to read Father Gregory Boyle's book, Tattoos on the Heart. As much as I would love to read the whole book to you, I was not given 9.5 hours up here. So in short, Father G, as he is called in the book, became the minister at Dolores Mission Church. The church sat in the poorest part of LA and was ravaged by gang violence. Father Boyle saw many of the children in his neighborhood and congregation being kicked out of school for their involvement in gangs. So he started school in his church so that the kids could be off the street and away from the threat of gangs. This slowly morphed into what is now Homeboy Industries, the largest gang intervention and rehabilitation facility in the world. Surely Father G had no idea nor intention that his after-school program in the so-called worst part of the city would sprout into something so beautiful. So we come to the complexly simple question of what makes a sacred place sacred. Is it the location? Is there some mystic veil that surrounds those places that we cannot see? I believe the answer to be a lot simpler. That a sacred place really has nothing to do with location or magic at all, but rather the people who are in that space make it special. Even the old hills of Camp Kaz lose their positive radiance when they are barren of campers. One of the counselors told us a story about how once they stayed at Kaz when camp was on session, and how the whole place felt foreign and different, like an alien landscape. So too is this church. Though it still radiates love and sanctuary when it is empty, it is nothing compared to the love that flows through the air on Sunday when we all sit and listen to Pastor Alan or Pastor Jessica reveal some deep truth about Christianity in our own lives. And definitely is not anything close to the sense of joy and harmony that fills the air when we all lift up our voices in worship. So, sacred places can be anywhere. And I believe that it is people that make those places sacred. Lastly, our text shows us that a little bit goes a long way. We see this in our third parable, about the women and the yeast and the flour and the yeast. A parable was an ancient wisdom saying that had a moral that was in some way surprising to the audience. Jesus was famous for his use of parables. Think of him like a smart aleck that always had a comeback. Every time someone had a question meant to deceive him, he always seemed to be able to come up with a way out. In fact, it is written after this parable that he said that he did not say anything to them without using a parable. So it was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet, I will open my mouth in parables, and I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. He basically told the crowd, when they asked what the meaning of the parables were, to go figure it out yourself. Now, what's surprising about the parable of the baker woman is that she was able to leaven 60 pounds of flour with only a small amount of yeast. And the yeast was able to work its way all through the flour and into dough. In the Gospel of Luke, did you guys really think I wasn't going to use my book? It is said rather that the women hid the East, and it became known. Sacred places are like that too. You usually don't intend for them to be sacred, but they slowly work their way into our hearts and lives, and then they are known. Sacred places can be anywhere, and they appear everywhere, and it is you that makes them sacred. So allow yourself, through love and compassion, to be the nutrients needed to plant and grow sacred spaces around you. Amen.